All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live. It is a beautiful, beautiful day here in the city of Houston, but it's cold. I'm not ready for this cold weather. I'm telling you right now, I am not ready. I think I'm going to have to wear all my clothes, all of them. Just every piece of garment that I own, I'm going to have to put it all on. I got some friends up in New York, and I was talking to them last night, and they were saying, you don't know what cold is, man. You ain't got no clue. And they're probably right. I'm not conditioned for cold weather. I'm a tropical kind of person. All right, guys. So today what we're going to be doing is we are going to be doing some retouching. We're going to be looking at Photoshop. We're going to be looking at a couple of other applications that you guys can use pretty, easily to do some of your retouching when it comes to, correcting your images, really basic things. So that's what we're going to work on today. But one of the first things we're going to do this morning, because, we kind of got to get that out of the way. We have a number of items here in the carousel, so we're going to go over those items here pretty quickly. So let me switch over. Just so we can get this pretty much rolling. So if you guys are interested in Photoshop, and you're thinking, that it's a very difficult, application to learn. Yeah, to some degree, there is a learning curve. There's no doubt about that. I feel like I'm learning new things every day that I use Photoshop. And there's tons and tons of, YouTubers out there, online courses that you guys can look into when it comes to learning about Photoshop, as well as, the content that I provide here on Amazon. So I try to go through some of the basic stuff, every time I go live, even if I'm not really focusing on Photoshop, you will see some remnants of Photoshop or Lightroom or Capture One, throughout my lives. So when I'm talking about, different gear, things like that, Photoshop has become, or has been for the longest time, one of the crucial pieces of software that I use almost on a daily basis. Everything from creating thumbnails or creating content, or if I just wanted, just do some retouching or whatever the case it is. Retouching is, one of the things as a photographer, we do quite often. And I'm not saying that you cannot do it in other applications, like for instance, Affinity Photo or GIMP or whatever the case it may be. But Photoshop has become the industry standard. So if you're interested in getting into photography, you're interested into bettering your skill set, the Photoshop Lightroom combination subscription is just it's a winning scenario. And actually the subscription that you see here for $19.99, this is the actual subscription that I have myself, that I use. Every month I pay, $19.99, for this subscription. And I don't feel in any way that, I'm not benefiting from it. Now some people might think, well, I don't do enough editing at the moment to, consider, that amount to be substantial, or worth it. But in reality, once you start using Photoshop and you look at all the things that are available to you in Photoshop, from, using actions, so many different built-in plugins, things like that, your workflow will just increase just exponentially. So, if you guys are, like I said, if you're interested in Photoshop, here it is right here in the carousel. I say, go for it and, watch some of my lives, where you can kind of follow along with me, finding images that there may be images you're taking yourself, or, images that you downloaded from the Photoshop, the Adobe gallery, where you can go into Photoshop and, download different images. Now, another application that I recommend to new photographers is Luminar Ai. And this is a standalone program. It can also be used as a plugin for Photoshop. So even if you don't have Photoshop, a lot of the features that you see that come with this specific software, whether it's for Mac or PC, will work just as well as a standalone. And I'll do a little bit of demonstration of this application and how I would use it. For instance, if I wanted to really just put some images together really, really quick for a client, or maybe just something I'm going to be using for social media and I just want to throw it out there really fast and, not spend, hours editing, Luminar would probably be the first application I would go to. Now, the advantage to Luminar today is that you can edit raw photos. So if you're capturing in RAW, which I always suggest that you do, then you could bring your raw images right into Luminar just like you would in Photoshop or in Lightroom, and you're still able to manipulate those images, in the highest resolution possible. So that's a win. Now, the other application that I use quite often, and I think for my portrait photography, product photography, things like that, where I really need my camera to be tethered. What I mean by tethered is for my camera to be connected to my computer in real time so that I'm able to capture images and then bring those images directly into my computer and see them on, whatever screen I'm using. So if I have a MacBook like I'm using right here, you can see the MacBook here. This is a 13-inch MacBook, but if I was sending this out to a much larger monitor, for instance, I don't know, a 72-inch monitor, if I was using that, in the studio, I could designate that as the monitor that I want the images to appear on. And every image I would capture every image would appear on that monitor. And what that does is it gives your makeup artists, your designers, your clients, not the model that you're shooting with at the time. Obviously, you don't want them looking at the monitor, but it gives them real-time feedback as to what you're capturing, your lighting settings, if there's any imperfections in the setup for the outfits or makeup or lighting or anything like that. You see that stuff real time. So being able to see that real time and to make a decision, right there on the fly, oh, wow, we need to adjust this light, or we need to, apply more makeup, or we need to, address her wardrobe or something like that. You can see that real time. And by being able to see it real time while you're capturing the images is going to speed up your post editing. Trust me, because that's just one less thing you most likely will have to work with or consider. Now, don't get me wrong. Capture One has a lot of features. It has a lot of the similar features as Lightroom. So in some instances, I prefer it over Lightroom. In most instances, I do, when I'm shooting with Sony's, because Lightroom doesn't have the ability to capture directly from the Sony where the Capture One Pro 22 does. So, anyway, so let's move on a little bit, because we want to get to our editing. Now, I know a lot of you guys have seen the recent lives I've done, as well as some of the shoppable videos on the GoPro Hero 10. I am so impressed with this little camera. I mean, you guys, if you follow me, I have a ton of gear, from, really high-end cameras and lenses and things like that. But for capturing content for, say, my social media, for capturing the behind the scenes footage or, B-roll, things like that, to be able to shoot in 5.3K, 60 frames a second, where I can slow that video down a little bit if I chose to in post, that's just amazing. Or to be able to shoot in that high of a resolution and then bring it into, say, a 4K timeline, or even a 1080 p timeline, if that's something that you guys are delivering in. Plus, 4K, you can shoot up to 120 frames a second. At 2.7K, you can shoot up to 240 frames a second. My pro cameras can't do that. So, for a camera that you can get right now for $499.95 that can do better image quality and frame rates than my $4,000 camera body is just amazing to me. And for it to be so small and durable, and you can easily, augment this camera to do so many different things. If you guys, like I said, if you watch my previous live, let me jump over to, okay. So here's the GoPro as I have it set up. And as you can see here, I have a microphone. I have, a cage on it, from Ulanzi. I have the mic adapter that you need from GoPro in order to connect a microphone to this little camera. But by doing all of these things, by adding all of these little components, what it's done is created a perfect little run and gun type of content rig. So in comparison to, say, like this pro camera that's here, I'm not going to have the same flexibility that I can with something the size of this little camera that can shoot at such a high resolution and be able to just move this thing around and take it almost anywhere. Plus, with the magnetic mounts that I have on here from Ulanzi, I can, connect this thing to almost anything. I mean, I can connect it to a wall or a pole or whatever. And then the advantage of being able to walk around and have this wireless microphone from Rode connected to it. It means I don't have to be directly in front of the camera. The camera could be in a corner somewhere recording the entire scene of what we're shooting, and yet it's getting, crystal clear audio from me, from my, Rode microphone. So again, that's a win. And it's in its cage. So this Ulanzi cage that I put it in, gives it just that little bit more security if something happens, if it was to fall off of a wall or, someone knocked it over. At least I have that little bit more security there to, protect it. And then, like I said, if you saw this before, if you're not using all of this gear, so for instance, you're not using the Rode, you could just detach that really simply. There's just a little clip here in the back. Let me just disconnect it. And you see how easy that slides off? Oops. Then I can unplug it just like that. So maybe this is all you really want. Maybe you just want, your GoPro in a really secure cage and you don't need the microphone connected to it for whatever reason is, if you're doing something action. Now with this cage, it is not waterproof. That's something you're going to have to consider, is because you have this door here that has the little opening for you to be able to connect the USB directly into it. So that's going to allow moisture into the GoPro if you're out, doing something in water or something like that. But, for people like me who are just creating content and just moving around, that's not a big deal. We're not really concerned about the camera getting wet or something like that. 99% of the time you're not. So I just want to show you that, you guys this, if you hadn't already seen what I was doing with the GoPros. Like I said, I am so excited about this camera and being able to use it in some of my upcoming content. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I have other GoPros. I have a GoPro still, an older GoPro 5, which is an excellent little camera. I mean, for the longest time, I used to connect this to my helmet when I would go riding, and I would use it, almost every night I went out riding, I would produce content from this. Or even the much older GoPro Hero Sessions. You can't buy these anymore, but every once in a while you'll find someone is selling one here on Amazon, and you could get one of these. But this is a little micro 4K camera. You can see here it's almost about the size of the lens on the new GoPro. But, for the most part, it's a fun little camera. And I mean, I've used that thing for forever, it feels like anyway. All right, guys, let's move along. Now, something that's in my carousel that I don't have yet that I'm very interested in getting is the a couple of these little vlogging lights. So let's switch back over to, oops, I'm just all over the place today. Okay, let's try this again. Let's switch back over to my normal. There we go. Okay, so one of the items that I'm really interested in getting today, that I want to purchase is one of these little small lights. Now I have an older version of some of these lights, but it's a much older version. So it's not giving me the same luminance as some of these newer lights would be able to do. And for, I'm probably going to purchase this today in another item that we'll talk about here in just a second. But, this item here, to have the little yoke, which is really cool, that you can easily attach this to almost anything. So ladies, if you're doing your makeup or something like that, and you need that little bit of light for something inexpensive, $23.99, man, that's a deal. I'm definitely going to have to get one of these lights. I have to, because a lot of times when I'm shooting, the problem that I run into here in my home studio is because a lot of the lights that I use are the modeling lights on my my pro flashes, like my pro photos or my Godox or something like that. Now the Godoxes, they do have a modeling light built in, but it's not, I don't want to really use one of my flashes as a designated light, for long video productions. So I would prefer to use something realistically that is designed for that purpose and, you know, is inexpensive. So, you know, for $23.99, you know, literally you could buy probably 4 of these and set up a really nice little, you know, 4-angle lighting setup, you know, for your blogs or something like that, or product photography, or if you're out blogging and you want to throw this on, say, you know, your GoPro or something like that, you know, that's pretty cool. So if I go back over here, and I think I have one of the older lights around here. Let me see if I can find it. See, if I'm always looking for stuff and I can never find it when I want it. Okay, I found it. So this is a much older light. If you see here, and I've had this light for a couple of years, and I used it occasionally for, you know, different little, you know, product photography, just where I need to just put just a little kiss of light in there. But because, you know, this is an older technology, these lights really just don't get very bright. You know, I don't even know if there's even batteries in this one. Yeah, it is. So this light is on right now at full power, and I can turn it toward the camera and you can barely see, you know, the output of the light that's coming from it. So what I'm looking for is obviously something that's going to be small, compact, that will fit either on a GoPro or fit on top of one of my pro cameras. If I just need a little bit of light, you know, to light up a scene, you know, that's going to be perfect for that. So I think, you know, for something like this light that you see here, and the fact that the built-in battery is, you know, 2000 milliamps. I mean, that means that battery is going to last pretty much all day long. You're not going to be shooting all day, but you would have the ability to shoot all day. So, you know, I think that's a good investment. That's one of the items that I'm definitely going to be looking at, you know, purchasing here really soon. Now, another item that has caught my attention, and I think because, you know, I move around a lot, you know, and you don't see that in, you know, these lives, but, you know, when I'm doing demonstrations and I'm moving around and I'm walking and talking, and, you know, I want, you know, the camera to be able to follow me. And a lot of times when I'm out with models or I'm working with, you know, a client and I'm shooting something, I don't have a second person there, you know, recording. So I would just put the camera up on a tripod and just, you know, try to stay within the, you know, the frame of, you know, whatever lens is there. But to have something like this Teleson, you know, smart selfie 360, you know, tracking device, it's $48.99. So now think about this for a second. Let's say you have your smartphone, or you have an action camera, or you have a small compact camera, and you want to be able to, you know, record yourself. You know, this is a perfect item, I think, you know, and until I get one in hand, I won't really know. I've just watched other people's reviews on it, and I was very impressed with the capabilities of what this is supposed to be able to achieve for you. Now, there are much better, I'm not gonna say better, but there are very expensive versions of this that you can find out there. You know, for what I needed to do is to basically track me with the camera and follow me around as I move around, and that way, you know, at least I'm going to stay in the frame, or whomever is being tracked is going to stay in the frame. So like I said, for the behind the scenes content, like, you know, working with, you know, clients, models, whatever it is, or it might be me doing a demonstration where I'm demonstrating lighting and I'm moving from one place to another, you know, the ability that this can, you know, track me and follow along as if, you know, I had a camera person there with me at the same time for an investment of $48.99. That's a no-brainer, man. That's a no-brainer. So, you know, that's an item I'm definitely interested in, you know, purchasing. I don't know if that's going to be the next item that I purchase, but it's definitely on my wish list. So we'll see how things go. Now, if you guys have seen a number of my other lives, you've already seen me demonstrate the Ulanzi, what is the GP? Which one is this? The GP9? I can't remember. Let me get it just so I'm accurate. Yes, the GP-16, which is the magnetic mounts. And these magnetic mounts allow you to connect your GoPro or any other smart camera, or it can be a smartphone, with the right adapter. So let's see here. Let's switch back over to my Sony so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is my GoPro. I'm waiting on the camera to focus. Okay, so here's the GoPro. And here in the back of it, I have the Ulanzi mount, which is the magnetic mount. And you can see that here. And what that does is, you see how, flush it is? Most people probably wouldn't even notice that it was there. But these are 4 very, very powerful magnets. And what it allows me to do is to connect this GoPro to almost anything. So I could take this GoPro as an example here, and this is the other component that comes with it, which is this other bracket. So this one is negative and this one's most likely positive. So if I want to connect this to this little bracket, it's that simple. Magnetically I can connect this camera, and I have it on my little selfie stick, and I can run around and do my little selfies, or set this up for a time lapse or whatever I want to. But one of the most unique things about this, that I like the most about it, is because it is magnetic, that means I can connect this to a wall, to a pole, to anything, right? So if you are struggling with areas, to be able to connect your camera and to get those certain angles, having a magnetic system that you could just clip this to almost anything, to a wall, to the framing around your mirror where you're doing your makeup, or to a refrigerator. Let's say you're doing a cooking tutorial or something like that, boom, you just stick it up there and it's good to go. And it also comes with another component, which is this little lanyard. And this lanyard mount can go, say, inside of your shirt or blouse, or wherever you want to put it. You can put it in your pocket. And then what you can do is you can connect your GoPro to that. So now every place that you turn your body, your GoPro or your smartphone or whatever it is going to be following along, and you're recording everything that's in line of sight. So for my normal setup, obviously, for me, I'm going to have the mount here for my microphone. So I just plug that into the GoPro. Then I have my wireless Go. I'm going to connect that like so. And then, like I did before, I just run the wires underneath, just so they're not, all over the place. And then you have this really compact little rig, with a wireless microphone, the adapter, the cage, and, this magnetic mount, which makes it super convenient, to go out and get really, really good footage. So if you're out, and about, and you're doing, a little blog, or you're out, with the kids or whatever it is, and this is not a, really heavy, system in comparison to, say, maybe this camera here. So to have that all built in, and you can hold it in your hand and almost put it in your pocket and walk around with it, to me, it's just an amazing thing. When you start putting these little components together and, really, getting to the creation side of things, and that's the key to it. We want to be able to find gear that just works. That's the key. It just works. So I could take this little rig here, and I could go out with my friends on my bike, and I can go for a ride, and I'm not going to have obviously the wireless microphone set up, but the same cage will connect to my helmet, and then I can just run the microphone that's inside of my helmet, connect it to this mic adapter, and then I can still ride around and do commentary or whatever it is. And then when I'm on off the bike, then I could just add the wireless Go, that I could carry in my pocket, or a tank bag or something like that. Then I could reconnect that. Now I can walk around, we can talk about stuff, and, look at other motorcycles, things that bikers do, or, whatever it is. Even if you were doing, think about it like this. Say you got kids and they're doing a sporting event. You could be their live commentator. You know, you can set your little camera up, you know, your GoPro up, and you got your microphone, and it's picking up your audio, your voice. So yeah, there maybe be a little background noise, you know, if there's, you know, a really rowdy type of event. But at the same time, you know, you could give your commentary, and you could say, oh, okay, there's, you know, Jason, you know, he just grabbed the ball and he's going for it, and then, oh no, a dinosaur came onto the field and ate everybody. Yeah, that would suck. But you'd have the video, and then you would blow up on YouTube because some people just got ate by a dinosaur, you know. So, you know, plus aliens. But we ain't gonna get into that right now. All right, guys. So anyway, I'm just going through a few of these items, you know, before we get deep into our retouching. Everything else, you know, that's in the carousel are things that I use, you know, like I said, you know, almost every day. You know, so if you guys see, I just selected the Wacom Tablet. You know, I use this thing for everything, for retouching, for photo editing, video editing, you know, whatever the case is going to be. So, you know, whatever it is that is creative, and I'm looking for, you know, precision when it comes to editing my photos. And you'll see that as I go, because as I do this little retouching demonstration here, you'll see that I'm using this tablet. I'll make sure to keep my desk on the screen so you guys can see exactly what it is that I'm doing. Now, the Wacom Tablet right now is for the medium, which is the one that I have here. The medium is, let's zoom back, go back over here. Okay, let's switch back over. Okay, there we go. So here's the medium Wacom tablet, and this tablet is $379.95. There is a larger version that you can purchase, which is $499.95, and there's a much smaller version that you can purchase for $209. Okay, so whichever one you go with, you know, it's a winning combination because of the function keys, the touch ring, all of the different things that I use on this tablet that speed up my workflow. I cannot emphasize enough how much this has improved my photo editing, my video precision when it comes to editing and masking and things like that. It has just done a wonderful, wonderful upgrade for things that I do on a daily basis. And that's the key. That's what I'm talking about before. Whatever gear you buy, don't just listen to, you know, whether it's me or anyone, you know, just say, oh, you must have this lens and you must have this blah, 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 blah. No, you don't need that. Pick things that you know are going to add value to your workflow, value to your life, value to you as an artist. That's the key. So if it doesn't bring value to you, you know, you're just wasting money. Okay, so we don't want to do that. We want to purchase stuff that we're going to be happy with today, tomorrow, and, you know, maybe 5 years from now. Who knows? Okay, so if you're on a budget, there is another version. There is a cheaper version of the Wacom tablet that you guys can look at, and that is the Wacom Intuos. And you can get this tablet for as little as $54.94. And a lot of the same things that you see me doing, and you'll see me doing going forward, you can do with that smaller tablet. So yes, it's a much smaller, you know, working surface. There's only 4 programmable keys, but starting out in the beginning, that may be all that you need. You may not need 8 keys and a touch ring and all these other things that you see me using here. You may not need all those things. Okay, so, you know, like I said, just starting out, that might be, you know, more than enough to get you started. So the Wacom Intuos, I did put it in the carousel just in case you guys would be interested in something like that. There's a number of other things in here, but we're going to go ahead and move on. There's some flashes, there's some modifiers, there's some lenses. You know, it's different things that I use, you know, so whether it's, as an example, I use my favorite lens to shoot with is the 135 if I have room to shoot with that lens. So if I'm in an environment where I can utilize this lens, you know, which is the 135 from Sigma, which is this lens you see here. Now, this is a heavy lens, okay? So you add that to a camera body with a battery grip and, maybe, a flash, controller. This is a lot of weight. So you better, be ready for it. But the picture quality that you can capture from this thing, the rendering, the color is just amazing. It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, yes, it is a little expensive, but at the same time, you get what you pay for. So if you're in the market for a high quality lens and you know that you're going to be doing a lot of portrait work, or you're going to be doing a lot of, anything that requires, like for instance, I'll tell you what I use it for. So I use the lens for headshots. I use it for full body shots. Like I said, if I can get far enough away from the subject. But most of the time it's going to be headshots to upper body and things like that, where really, if I'm in studio, then I'm going to be shooting with the high f-stop, somewhere around f8 all the way up to maybe f10, 11. But if I'm outdoors, and we're doing something in natural light, to be able to shoot at 1.8, and really blur out that background, that may be a little too much, but most of the time that's what people want, that creamy background where everything's all blurred out and, just the bokeh is just amazing. You're like, yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, it is. And this kind of lens will definitely get you there. So, it is what it is. All right, guys. So I think we've gone over pretty much everything that's in the carousel, other than a few items. You guys are more than, you can just look through the carousel and see if there's anything that you like. I usually try to put items in the carousel of things that I think that you guys might be interested in based on what it is we're going to be talking about today. So let's move on, and we're going to go over to Capture One. Okay, so we're in Capture One. We're looking at a number of images that I've worked with here before. Let me turn off the touch. So the Wacom tablets, the one that I have, you can actually use the touch sensitivity. It has the ability to work like a trackpad. You can zoom with it, you can pan, and all that kind of cool stuff. But for the most part, I don't use it that way. So I usually use it to, for my retouching. I don't know why it's not responding in here. Let me close Capture One. And let's close this because we don't need it anymore. Photoshop can stay open. And we're going to go back over here and open Capture One. We're not going to really do a lot in Capture One. I just want you guys to see exactly what it is. Okay. And let's close this. Okay, so if I was using Capture One for the most part to, capture my images real time, I would be, shooting in studio. And then what I would do is I would be able to view those images real time and say, oh, okay, that's great. I really like, what's coming in here. Or at the same time, maybe there's a problem. For instance, I see a lot of, exposure here on her forehead. So that means this is going to be a problem, a highlighted problem. So there's a number of different ways we could address this. One is, we could just lower the exposure, for the capture. And what's cool about Capture One, for you photographers that are shooting portraits and stuff like that, say for instance, I did reset this, during the capture process. The next image that comes in is going to hold these same settings. So if I lower the exposure for some reason, then the next images coming in are going to lower the exposure as well. So every image going forward will have those same exposure settings. Or, for instance, maybe you're zooming in on something. So if you zoom in and, you see the sharpness, you're looking for the sharpness, what, f-stop you're shooting at, making sure that everything is in focus, is sharp. And it's just a really fast, program when it comes to all the tools that you need as a photographer. And then all of your other tools are right here to the side, your exposure, contrast, brightness, saturation, your highlights, shadows, white, and your black points. And then, your clarity, structure, all of these things are right here. And these are all detachable. So you could move them and you could, move them to another whole panel if you wanted to. So usually when I'm shooting, I have this up. and it, you know, it has all of my camera settings, so it could see the camera. It knows what the camera's f-stop is, what the ISO is set at, and you know what mode I'm in, and all that kind of cool stuff. So, you know, to be able to use an application like Capture One just really speeds up my workflow. So we're going to pick an image from Capture One that's in this gallery here to do our retouching. So that's a DNG. Let's see, what does the makeup look like? It's not bad. There's a few little flyaway hairs, so that gives us something to edit. There's some acne. I'm not a fan of this lipstick, but it's a good image to start with. So before we even take this into Photoshop, of course, I could just come in here and I could raise the exposure just a little bit, and I could also adjust the contrast a touch, and then zoom in and see what I'm getting. So now I see a lot of highlights that I'm not a big fan of. But when you get to the retouching, you know, phase, you know, a lot of times those highlights can be your friend. So we're just gonna find a happy point that we're good with, and then we're gonna just right click on this, and we're gonna edit in Photoshop. Which one do we want to edit in? For some reason, my new Photoshop is not showing up here. So let's try other and see what happens. So I'm gonna go to my applications, and I want Photoshop, that Photoshop. Click open and see if it sends it over. Looks like it did. Okay, so now if we zoom in here, one of the things that I noticed right off is the skin looks a little green to me. So first thing I'm going to do is adjust the tint. Bring it back to more warmer skin tone. And then I can adjust the exposure just a touch. And let's zoom out. Now everything looks good. So I mean, that to me looks like what the photographer intended for this image. So it should make it that much easier to do the retouching. I don't see a need to, I mean, this is a really, really sharp image, you know, so it's very high quality. Right now, this is a 24 megapixel image. I usually work with much higher resolution images, but you know, to get started for what we're doing here in Photoshop today, this is fine. So we're just gonna click open, and we're gonna open this in Photoshop. So let me switch cameras so you guys can see what my hand is doing. Okay, so here I am using my tablet, and we're in Photoshop. And as you see, everything that I do, I'm just literally doing it here from the tablet. So if I want to zoom in as an example, you know, I could just, you know, hit the zoom, and I can just zoom in and out to see, to look at the image and determine, you know, what it is that I really want to address when it comes to the retouching. So the first thing I would do normally is to duplicate this layer. So that is Command J or Control J on the PC, Command J on the Mac. So now I have a duplicate of this layer, and I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down here, and I'm gonna add a black and white layer above it. And then I'm going to pull my reds all the way down to the point where you start to really see all the imperfections. Okay. Now we're not going to be editing on this black and white layer. What it does is just makes it that much easier for us to see the things that, you know, our eye may overlook. So if we bring this really far down, you start to see all the imperfections in the skin, like, you know, pimples and scarring if there's any, or, you know, anything that could be a problem. So we zoom in a little bit, and I'll give you guys an example. So right here, where you see me moving the mouse around, there's a big pimple there, right? But if I turn off this black and white, you don't see it anymore. Turn it back on, and then there it is. And there's others, you know, just like that, you know, things that you would not normally see with this without using, you know, this helper layer. So like right here, there's acne or something, some kind of, you know, scabbing right here. But if I turn the black and white off, you don't really see it unless you're really looking for it. So you would easily overlook something like that, you know, in the retouching. So the initial retouching, what you're looking to do is to remove those imperfections before you even get to the point of frequency separation or anything like that. Now we're going to be using a panel today, and once you guys install Photoshop, you sign up for Photoshop, you get your Photoshop, you get your Lightroom, then another application plugin that that you may want to you guys want to look at is this Retouch Pro Panel. This is excellent for new photographers that don't have a real strong background in frequency separation and creating your own actions. Like I have, as you can see here, I got tons of actions, and some I've removed because I had so many. But each one of these actions does something different. So for instance, I have a 16-bit and an 8-bit for frequency separation. When we get to the frequency separation point, I'll explain that to you. But this panel also gives you frequency separation. It also gives you a really easy way to soften the skin, to add texture back, to add skin tone, to dodge and burn, to add a little bit of glow. You can do facial and body hair removal. You can remove red removal where there's red areas. You can add a little bit of grain to give it kind of that photo picture look, and then your contrast and things like that. And that's just on the skin level. So we haven't even gotten to say, for instance, eyes and lips and teeth and hair. So it has the ability to do all of those things. But when we get to that, so right now what we're going to do is we're just going to go in here and remove some of these flyaway hairs, and we're going to remove some of the other imperfections in her skin. So I'm using the tablet. I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to choose my spot healing brush. And then from the tablet, I'm going to make my brush smaller and somewhat hard. So now I can go in, and as you see these little flyaway hairs, I can just go in and just paint over these hairs, and they'll just instantly disappear because I'm cloning them out. So what it's doing is it's removing the hair and replacing it with the nearby, texture from the skin that's next to it. So as I just go through here, and you don't need to remove every one of these hairs. You just want to remove something that doesn't look like it belongs there, But being able to control everything with pen pressure versus using your finger on like a touchpad or something like that, it just speeds up your workflow that much more. I should have left that black and white layer on, but I can pretty much see all the things that I want to take out. So I see a few little imperfections here. There's a line under her eye, so I could easily get that. Then come down here. Now, one of the things that I did notice with these images is that there's a few areas where the lipstick didn't go all the way to the lip, and you can see where there's hair missing in that area. And then right next to her finger here, you can see there's a little bit of acne there, right? So we could just take our spot healing brush, and we just go in there, really simple. That's probably a little too big. And we could just go in and just touch that up really quick. So any place that we see an imperfection, whatever it may be, whether it's acne, whether it's, like right here, we talked about this area before, I could just, draw over that and remove that pretty easily. And then you could go through the entire face, looking for, any imperfections, flyaway hairs, like there's one here. We're not going to get every one of them because this live would be, 4 hours long. Nobody wants to sit through that. But we're going to get the majority of them. Okay. And if you miss something, you can just come back and, just go over it again. And in no time, you guys will just become lightning fast at doing this. You just be able to just go in and you see the things that you want to take out, and you just use your pen pressure, and you can just stroke these out. Because remember, we're also going to be correcting the skin color, with another technique here in just a second. And we're going to try out our panel just to see how well it does for frequency separation. I don't usually use the panel for frequency separation. For the most part, I use actions that I've already created. Now, if you guys already have Photoshop and you want these actions, you can get them free. If you're already following me on social media, there's usually a link in my bio where you can go and download those from my Dropbox. You can get them for free. So I'm just going to grab a couple more hairs so you guys get the idea. You see how it works. And then, like I said, you can go in here and you can look for all these little things that may be an annoyance or something that did not get taken care of during the time they were, applying makeup or whatever it is. And you just go in and clean those little things up. Okay, so let's assume, we're happy with everything here that we got. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to, let's just resize this so we can see the whole full image. So that's our full image. We can zoom in a little bit. And then if I turn it off, the top layer, you see everything come back that we removed, and then it goes away again because we've edited on this upper layer. So at that point, we don't need this layer anymore. We can just go ahead and flatten it. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. Another thing is you want to keep your history panel open, so that way if you do need to go back a few steps, you can just scroll up here into your history panel and you can go back and find exactly where it is that you made a mistake, and you can just click on that and then start going forward from that point forward. Okay, so we want to speed this up. We're just want to finish a photo, for a client or whatever it's going to be, and we want to use a panel, one of these retouch panels, to be able to make it easier for us. So one of the tools that it has here is this easy action, which basically allows you to just pretty much soften the skin. It just softens literally everything, but it'll give you the option to be able to paint it in exactly where you want this to be. So whenever it runs, because this is a large file and this is a little slow because I'm probably running too many things right now today on my little computer. The computer that could chug, chug, chug. But it'll get it done. You can believe that. How much you want to blur the skin and all that kind of stuff, right? So you see here, it's created another layer and it says easy right next to it. And you see that there is a layer mask that is in black. So that means your foreground color needs to be in white to reveal what is underneath this mask. So you're going to come over here and you're going to choose your brush. You just want a standard brush. And then you can determine how large you want the brush to be. So let's say you want the brush to be maybe about that size and soft. But most people starting out, they just make the brush really hard. So that way that the effect is seen, 100%, and then you can then adjust the opacity. So let's zoom in a little bit so we can see exactly what's going on. So let's zoom in on her face. We're going to go ahead and close the panel temporarily so you see a little bit more real estate here. So let's say here we've selected this layer mask. Our foreground color is white. We've already selected our brush, and now we're just going to go in here and just start painting in. And you just start to see instantly how much it's smoothing the skin. Now you want to take a little bit of time. You don't want to smooth the hair. I'm going to make this brush a little smaller. And then I can go in and just start smoothing our skin. And like I said, in the beginning, it's going to look like it's too much, because I can see right now, to me, this is way too much. But at the same time, I can then go back in and adjust the opacity at the end of it. So right now what we're doing is trying to just get coverage. So we just want to cover as much of the face as possible. And then a lot of times by doing this, you hide a lot of those imperfections. So like pimples and acne and facial hair, if there's any, some people have that. And you can just go in here and just paint away. Now I'm doing this kind of sloppy, but you guys get the idea. And then I'm going to go over here on this cheek. I'm showing you the easy way first. Now, this is not the way I would do it, but it is an option. So right now we're just, softening her skin. Stay away from hard lines, like the eyes or eyebrows or anything like that. But let's just say we just wanted to soften maybe her fingers a little bit. You know, we could go in here and we could soften those as well. And now, once we've done this, you can click on the mask, hold Option and click, and it'll show you every place that you painted. So let's zoom out a little bit. Oops. So if we zoom out and let's go to View, Bit Screen, we can see every place that we painted and the amount of pressure that was applied on this mask, for instance. So, you know, at that point you can say, okay, I missed a couple of spots, so I can just come in here and I could paint further, you know, on the mask. And then what you're seeing here is this variations is the amount of pressure that I'm applying each time I'm painting something, right? So I may be painting a little bit lighter in certain areas and a little bit harder in other areas, but it's just to give you an idea of, you know, what I'm seeing here, you know, within the mask. Okay, so let's assume that's pretty good. You know, of course you could further enhance this, zoom in and be sure, but then to go back to your normal view, just hold down your Option and click on it and it'll go back to the normal view. So then if we zoom in here a little bit, we can see that a lot of retouching has been done to her skin, you know, almost to the point that it looks cartoonish. But what you can do here is from that layer, you can come up here to your opacity and you can start to bring your opacity down to allow some of the texture to come back through. So right now, let's say we want to bring this down to say 50%. So 50% is going to give us a more realistic looking image where you can still see some texture in her skin, but it's still much softer than it was without it. So if we turn that off, that's before, and that's with the effect, you know, at 50%. So it does work, but, you know, like I said, this is not the route I would normally go if I was going to, you know, retouch this image, but I do something similar to it. I just, you know, have a little bit more precision and control. So I'm going to remove that mask and that effect. Now, like I said, normally I run my own action. So I would come here and I would hit my 16-bit action here. And what it's going to do is it's going to ask me, first of all, how blurry do I want the color layer to be? So then as I look at this image and I can zoom in a little bit and look for the details. So if we bring it all the way down to 0, there's no blur applied to the color at all. Then if we start to move this radius up, say to, I don't know, let's just make it 10. Yeah, okay, that's good enough. So let's say that's the amount of blur we want to be on the color. Now this only affects the color. It has no effect on the texture whatsoever. So if we click on that, then what it's going to do is going to separate the layers and create a black and white mask to help us see what it is we want to correct. So I'm going to close this panel here. And then we're going to zoom in a little bit. And you can see, you know, what we're looking at. So if we go here, you know, to our black and white, we could go in and we could add more or less or whatever it is. But for the most part, this is just to show us the difference in the colors, you know, where there's highlights and shadows and things like that. So to do similar to what we just did with that other little plugin, I'm going to turn off my high layer, which is where the texture is. There's another layer below, and that's where you would, you know, sample and then paint in color. You don't need that, so I can turn that off as well. And then I can come down to the low layer where all the color resides. So in order for you guys to see that, I'm going to turn the black and white off, and you'll see that it's just the colors that are here on this layer. So now if I come over to my brushes, and instead of selecting a regular brush, I'm going to select the mixer brush. And that's the brush I'm choosing. I have that wet set at 9. The load is at 75, the mix is at 90, and the flow is at 100. So now what I can do is I can come in here and I can look at this image and look at, you know, where there's highlights, there's midtones. Some of these you want to blend together where there's some harmony, where they all look consistent and you don't see the variations between, you know, the areas of her skin where she's wet or looks wet and there's a lot of shine from the light. So what we can do is we just come in here and just start mixing these colors to get them to uniform. And that's all we're doing here. All we're doing is just mixing the colors. And then here on her forehead, I'm doing basically the same thing. I'm just mixing those colors. And I'm going kind of like in a little circular motion. But, you know, sometimes you'll go in a straight motion. It just depends on the direction that the colors and everything are flowing in. So if you're following like a cheek line or something like that, you may be going in a straight motion. So here, right above her eyebrow where the makeup is, I want to mix that and try and get rid of some of that scarring that I'm seeing too, because you can mix those colors in and you can hide a lot of that. So like here where there's an indentation here, you know, between her eyes, you can kind of mix those colors together enough that it won't be so obvious. And then I can come down and do a little bit here on her nose. And what the goal here is to just mix the areas where there's imperfections or there's variations in the color. You just want those colors to be uniform. Now, for most images, you may never ever do this. But if you're, you know, working with brides or you're working with corporate clients and you're doing headshots for them or something like that, or you're doing some content for your own social media, you know, this might be exactly what you want to do, is to come in and just do a little bit of retouching, you know, especially, you know, guys as well. You know, maybe you want to do some retouching on your photos, you know, where, you know, we don't wear a lot of makeup. Now, just so you guys know, who may not be aware, every professional that you meet, that you see, that you watch on the news, on social media in many cases, are wearing makeup. Every actor that you follow is wearing makeup. They spend hours in makeup before the shoot. I've worked with you know, celebrity ball players that spent more time in the makeup chair than they actually did in front of the camera, you know, just to get camera ready. So, you know, don't shy away from wearing makeup if you have to wear a foundation or something like that, especially when you're going to be under harsh lights. You know, there's a number of different people here on Amazon that are excellent at makeup. And if you ask them, I'm sure, you know, they will give you a lot of advice when it comes to, you know, if you're a guy and you say, hey, you know, I may need to wear a little makeup, you know, to hide some things or conceal a few things. You know, how do I go about doing that? You know, most likely they'll make some recommendations to you. But for me here, I'm showing you how you can correct it in the digital world if you need to. So I'm just going over and I'm just mixing the colors. So like, for instance, on her hand. And I'm just, you know, creating some uniformity. And I don't want it to be flat, so I don't want to mix everything where it's all one color. I want there to be variations in color because that's what happens in nature. So you want that. So I'm only going into certain areas where I can see something obvious that needs to be addressed. So like here, even though this is a highlighted area, I still want to mix that. And I'm not going to mix it with this shadowed area here because I want the shadow to be separate. Now I'm doing this a little fast, but you guys kind of get the idea. You want to spend a little time looking at the colors and making sure you're getting exactly what it is that you're targeting. So let's go more to the shoulder. So like a lot of those little pimples and imperfections will be hidden when you do this, when you mix these colors, because that's all on the color layer. So you could come in here and, you know, really do a lot of corrections here. Now, when I'm working with people that have freckles, I don't really do this style of editing for the most part because I don't want to remove their freckles. You know, unless it's something they want, you know, but for the most part, I think freckles are really cool. So I wouldn't remove those unless a client, you know, asks me to. Okay, let's zoom over here to this side, same thing. We're just gonna go in here real quick and kind of soften her skin up. Just mix these colors in just a little bit. Like here, there's a little spot, a couple of lines. But as you see, I'm trying to avoid mixing anything that's going to flatten the image to the point. So there's a darker area here. I want it to stay there. So that way, when I get to the phase where I'm doing my dodging and burning, it gives me something to focus on because I know that there's a difference in the color and everything of that specific area. So let's zoom up, pan up. Okay, so there's a few more little spots. So another thing that you can do, let's zero this image out. Okay, so let's turn our texture layer back on, and then we can zoom in and take a look at it as to our progress. So let's turn all of the frequency separation off. That's before, and that's after. Before and after. So even if you zoom in like here on the forehead, you know, my goal when I do this is not to make it look like a lot was done. Okay, so if you look at her forehead, you can see all of these, you know, inconsistencies. And then when we turn it back on, they just all blend better together. So that's kind of our goal. So then once you get to this stage, you know, if you're happy with it, then you can move on to the next stage. So the next stage for me, since her eyes aren't open, so we wouldn't be doing any eye whitening or adjustments on the eyes or anything like that. But we do want to bring back some of the definition to the face and the structure of the face. So the next thing we want to do is going to be frequency separation. Dodging and burning. So we should be able to go in here. So let's say, I think we're good with that. So let's go ahead and just flatten this. Now, the panel has dodging and burning. So if we go over to our panel, now, like I said, I've created actions for this exact same thing, but you know, if you're purchasing this panel, all of these things are right here for you. So right here, you see where it says dodge and burn. So just click on dodge and burn. And then we can close the panel again. So now you see a little folder here with a layer mask that is in white. You want to open the folder and you're going to scroll down and you'll see two additional layers. You'll see one that says dodge and one that says burn. Okay. So on top of that, just so you can see what you're doing, you could still come back in and create a helper layer, which is black and white. And we're going to bring that above the folder just so it's up there. Okay, so now it's above the folder, so we can turn it on and off. And then what we can do here is we could bring our reds down a lot. And then what it'll start showing you is the areas that should most likely be burned and the areas that should most likely be dodged. So to make this work, you're going to, let's say we start with our burn as an example, right? So we're going to click on this little burn mask layer here. Make sure our foreground color is white. And we're going to be using a traditional brush, not the mixer brush, just your regular brush. And then at that point, you can decide how big you want the brush and if you want it to be hard or soft or medium soft, and that's all up to you. So I'm looking at areas where I see that there should be some shadowing. But the other thing that I also want to look at before I start painting here is how much of this effect do I want to apply? So the opacity or the flow is, you know, one of the two that you would choose. So let's say, for instance, we stick with 100% opacity, but we want the flow to be all the way down to, let's say 10% as an example. We'll probably need that just so you guys will be able to see it. So let me make my brush smaller. And then I'm just going to apply a little bit of shadowing here on her cheek, along this chin, under her neck, this line here. So all the areas where I see that there's darkness or there's shape, and that's what I'm doing. It's just adding a little bit more just so we bring back some of that detail that we lost. So if we turn this black and white off as an example, we'll see what we're doing. And we're not doing a lot, so I'm just adding just a little bit of color here. That's probably a lot. That's too much, but you'll get the idea. It's probably the only way you're going to be able to see it with the video compression. So if I turn this off, that's before and that's after. Before and after. Now, that's way too much. So I could bring the opacity down just so it's just coming in right about the right point. So I'm going to bring it down to about 30%. Yeah, that's pretty good. So then we turn that off. We just see a little pop. That's all we want, is that little pop there. So then we go to our dodge layer. Dodge is every place that is light. So all I want to do is just add a little kiss of light in those areas. You know, like here on the chest, on the shoulder here. So every place that is lighter, and then your black and white layer can show you those as well. So I can come in here and I see there it's an area here. And you may not need to apply as much dodging in every area. And that's where the pen pressure really comes in handy, because you may just want to just add just a little bit, in a certain spot. But then right next to it, you might have an area that you want to add more. So I'm going like around her ear here. And then I turn the black and white off. And you can see the difference. So if I turn off the entire dodge and burn, that's before and that's after. Before and after. So let's zoom in so you guys can see that a little bit better. What's up, Snap? I'm just doing a little retouching. How's your day going? So simply enough, that's it. So if we turn off the dodge and burn, that's before and that's after. Now, there's a few other things that you could have done here. You could have, further softened the skin if you wanted to do that, if that was your goal. But for most makeup applications and things like that, the goal is to, make sure that the skin is going to be consistent, the colors are going to be consistent. Now, I do every once in a while do a little bit of dodging and burning on the makeup. So, for instance, let's zoom out here a little bit. If we look at her eyes. So if you're looking at these, you'll probably go, oh, that looks fine. There's nothing wrong with those. Why would I do that? But once you turn that black and white layer back on, you start to see the differences, right? So if I wanted to further enhance this a little bit, I could come back down to my burn layer, and then I could add just a little bit more dimension. Let me bring my pen size down. Then I could just come in here and just find certain areas where I want to darken this just a little bit more, just to make those colors pop. I'm going around the eye line, and then now where it's light, I might add just a little bit more light there, just to make the makeup pop just a little bit more. And remember, you're going in the direction of the makeup as it was applied. So now turn that off. Oops, turn the black and white off. And then I turn the dodge and burn off and back on. And you can see how it makes the makeup just pop just a little bit more. And then, like I said, you could go in there further and, add a little bit more light in certain areas if that's what you want to do. The dodging, for the most part, just helps you create dimension. So like here, I could bring in just a little bit more color just to outline the makeup so you can see it a little bit better. Considering the compression that you're going to be dealing with, like on whether it's YouTube or here on Amazon. Same thing around her lips. I could come in here and just go around the outer lip and just do a little bit of burn, and then I could grab my dodge, and then I could just come in here and just hit the little highlighted areas just so it stands out a little bit more, just adding a little bit of pop to it. That's before and that's after. Now, like I said, this panel has a lot of other things that you can do with it, and I'll show you some of those here real quick. So let's just go ahead and flatten this image. And let's zoom out. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of people will like about this panel here for Photoshop is that you can come over here to where it says face. And you can choose different components of the face. So let's say, for instance, we went with eyes and we chose eyes. So if we wanted to make our eyes larger or wider or, higher, you can just click on one of these and it'll do basically that. So let's say, for instance, we're going to adjust the height. If I hit this once, it's going to create a new layer, and that layer is going to have the eyes a little bit higher than the ones before. And then each time we do it, it's going to create a new layer. So what you'll wind up having to do at the end is to flatten those layers if that's the one you choose. So if you decided you didn't want that, you probably can't see that. So let me zoom in here. So if I turn this off, See how it kind of tucks in and on? It just makes them a little bit bigger and so on. And it also works about the same, for instance, say like if you wanted to do the nose as an example. So you can make the nose, the width, you know, smaller. Give it a second. And that's after, that was before, that's after. And you could do that as many times as you wanted to. So it's totally up to you. So, you know, as another example, say for instance, you wanted to, you know, make the lips larger. You know, you see that a lot in retouching. So if you want the smile to be bigger, you can adjust the smile. So like, say for instance, maybe the top lip, you want it to be more, you know, fuller. So you just hit that once and it'll make the lips a little bit larger. Let's turn that off and back on. Then if we go with the bottom lip, we could do the same thing. We can make it a little bit larger if that's the goal. But Photoshop also has some built-in plugins that can do basically the same thing, or filters. So if you go into filters, under neural filters, you have some basic filters here already built into Photoshop that comes with Photoshop that does a lot of these same things under Liquify as well. So let's just flatten this image. So we're going to flatten this image and then we're going to zoom out on it. And I'm going to show you what Liquify can do. Now this is built into Photoshop, so you don't have to add anything. You don't have to buy anything additional. You just literally click on Liquify and then you can zoom in on your image. That's way too much. I don't know why it does that every time. Okay, let's zoom out. Okay. So starting from the bottom, you have your zoom tool, you have your hand tool, and then this third one up from the bottom, if you click on that, what it's going to do is going to highlight the face. So if you mouse around, you can see different outlines around the face, right? The lips, the nose, the jawline, so on and so on. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to slim her jawline a little bit or adjust it. I could just grab this little tab here and I can just start pushing in and out. So you see exactly what you can do with it. I'm not saying do this, I'm just saying you can do it. So same as with the eyes. So if I wanted to make her eyes larger, I could. I wanted to make them smaller, I could. So if I wanted to emphasize this makeup more, I could bring it out by just adjusting, you know, the size of the area where the makeup is applied, you know, just to give it a little bit larger size. Same thing with the nose, like we did with the little plugin. If you want to make the nose wider, you can. If you want to make it smaller, you can do all of those things here. Now, some lenses, depending on how you're applying or using that lens, can have a tendency, if you're using like a wide angle lens and you're trying to use it for a portrait lens, you can distort the facial features. So make sure whenever you're shooting your face or someone's face, you're using a more traditional portrait lens, you know, from a 50 to an 85 all the way up to, you know, 135 like I use a lot, you know, so it's up to you. But I'm just showing you that here's some things that are built into Photoshop that you can use, you know, pretty much to do a lot of your photo corrections. Then another tool up here is the push tool, which allows you, let's make the brush larger. I can now go in and I could say, make sure the brush is large. And let's say I wanted to adjust her shoulder there. And I wanted to shape her neck a little bit. I can do all of that right here. Now, what I really use this for a lot of times is that I'll come in and I'll add volume to the hair, you know, just to make the hair pop a little bit. Make that a little bit smaller. And I want to bring this hair up, kind of even it out. And a lot of times you don't really have to do a lot. You can just come in and just little things that you see in the image that you would want to correct. And you say, I want to just bring this over just a little bit. And there we go. Then you just hit OK. Now, of course, Liquify does far more than what I just showed you, okay? That's just one of the things you can do with Liquify. Other things that you can do with some of these built-in presets or plugins in Photoshop, as an example, you can come here under Neural Filters, and there's a ton of new filters, and they're all free. You just have to download them. the first time. But you can do skin softening, you can do like a super zoom, you can do removing JPEG artifacts. Like if you have an old photo or low resolution image, it'll do its best to try and correct that. You also have a colorizing filter that you can use to change black and white images to color images. You have some style transfers. You have so many things. And then you have some new beta stuff down here that you can kind of play with also. But let's go up here real quick and look at the skin softening one. So let's turn that on. And oh, it's not seeing a face. So for some reason, it doesn't see this as a face. So let's cancel. I don't know why it wouldn't see that as a face. That happens sometimes. Now, some of these things are, even though they're fully active, they're still under the beta category. So now you see it sees the face. So I can turn this on. And then if I move her over, if I wanted to soften her skin even more, I could come in here and just blur, add a little bit of blur. So I'd bring that up to maybe 60. And it's softening the skin. And you see down here, it shows where the process is. It's showing that it's processing the image. If you wanted to add a little bit more smoothing to it, you could do that too. So you could add that right here. And then basically what it does is it does a lot of like what we just did with the frequency separation and what have you. It goes in and it targets the color layer and it tries to blur out the color layer to soften the skin. So let's give it a second to complete, because once it's complete, you'll be able to, click OK. But until then, you're just going to have to wait for it to process. So, so we'll just hang out. Now, the reason why it may take a little while is because in Photoshop, what it does is, like that's ridiculous. Okay, so we don't want that. But let's bring that back. What it does is it sends the image off to the cloud, and then what then it does its Photoshop magic, and then it re-downloads it back to your computer. So, like I said, some of these will work really, really super well, and then some of them, but they're there, to play with. Then you also have like this new smart portrait one. A lot of people like that because what it does is it identifies people in the photo, and then you can offset the, the background. So if you're looking to simulate shooting with a lens like for instance, a 85 millimeter or something like that, or a very low aperture lens. I'm just going to cancel that. Or low aperture lens, if you want to be shooting at 1.4, 1.8 or something like that, but the image wasn't taken that way, that's what that filter can basically do for you. It'll select the image, and then you can then adjust how much of the background you want to be in focus or out of focus. Okay, so usually when I get to this stage and I've done my dodging and burning and I've done my frequency separation, then dodging and burning, well, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll duplicate this layer again. And then just to give it a little bit more punch, I'll come down and I'll go down to soft light. And you see it just adds a lot of contrast, but we don't want that much contrast. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to bring it down to maybe about 20%. Just so it pops a little bit more. And then, at this point, this could be it. I mean, this could be your final image. You could be happy with this and say, okay, yeah, this is exactly, what I want from this image. And then you just move on, save the image and move on. But like I said, it just depends on, what it is you're trying to achieve with your image. So a lot of this you can do in Photoshop. A lot of this you can do in Luminar AI. And, you can do a lot of the stuff that, you see me doing here. Now, for the plugins, for the actions, you're going to need Photoshop. I don't know of any other application that you can run the same type of actions that you see me running here in Photoshop. I've tried it in other applications. I've tried workarounds, and it's just really clunky. So, getting to this level where you can create this type of getting to this level where you can create this type of, photo retouching, you're definitely going to need something like Photoshop. So, that's where we are today. All right, guys. So I'm going to bring this live to an end. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful weekend. We got to enjoy, fireworks and, what we do. What we do. So we had a good time. So it is that. All right, guys. I will be live again Wednesday at noon. So I will be on here noon on Wednesday as well as on Friday. So if you're new to this, please follow me here on Amazon. In the future, if you guys have any questions, leave them, down below. I monitor the questions as much as I can, and I try to answer them as much as I can, during the lives. Now, if you guys already follow me on other social media platforms, you know that you can ask me questions anytime you want to, and I do my best to answer them, as soon as I see them. So if you're interested in Photoshop, if you're interested in Luminar AI, or if you're interested in Capture One, or, learning about camera gear, photo lighting setups, things like that, this is the channel that you want to be on. Now, also, if you're a biker, this is also the channel you want to be on, because I've been a biker the majority of my life, and I do a lot of content on some of my other social media platforms, related to motorcycle gear, setting up your bike, setting up your helmets for blogging, picking the right cameras, right microphones, and stuff like that. So if that's something that you're interested in, you will definitely find it also here on this channel. All right. So guys, I'm going to bring this live to an end. So until Wednesday, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, take care of your loved ones, and get out there and create something amazing. I will see you guys very soon. Wednesday. That's pretty soon. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Until then, stay safe. Peace. I'm out.